Well, the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson says the country will revise its laws to allow people to receive any effective coronavirus vaccine even before it's fully licensed. But it will adopt reinforced safeguards to make sure patients aren't put at risk. Well, like many other countries, Britain has signed numerous deals with pharmaceutical companies in the hope of getting a vaccine. But how long will it take and how safe will it be? Well, joining me now to help answer these questions is Marie-Paule Kenny. She's Director of Research at the French Institute for Health and Medical Research and President of the French COVID-19 Vaccine Committee. Well, thanks for taking time to speak to us here on the programme. Well, the big question everyone's asking right now is how long is this going to take before we have a vaccine that we can dish out to people?
I think what we can say right now is that we can be reasonably positive that the product that are moving forward might become vaccines, which is, it has been a definition. Of course, it depends what you say a vaccine. A vaccine can be very efficacious or can be less efficacious, but there seems to be an agreement that to call it a vaccine, it should protect at least 50% of the people who have received the injection. So a few vaccines are moving forward into testing efficacy, and one can hope that there should be early results, let's say end of October, beginning of November for the most advanced, but not before.
Now, we mentioned that Britain is preparing to revise its laws to allow the emergency use of any effective vaccine. Could we read into this that this is a sign that there's an inherent danger in this process?
Well, normally, when you develop a vaccine, let's say against a normal illness, a childhood vaccine, it takes quite a while to get a real registration. It takes several years for the regulatory authorities to go through all the dossier. But then there's not this emergency. Therefore, when we talk about availability of a vaccine, we're more talking about an emergency use authorization that would take much less time. Of course, it will depend, the urgency will depend on the potential severity of what everybody calls a second wave and of the effectiveness of the vaccine. So it's a question of weighing risk and benefit.
But right now we've got the pharmaceutical industry asking European regulators to give it protection in case things go wrong, and that can't be a good sign, can it?
Well, there are two aspects, and I can say that there are precedents. For example, during the epidemic, the influenza pandemic in the year 2009, 2010, there was such indemnification of manufacturers for all adverse events. Now, there are two types of liability. One is liability against unexpected adverse events, and you could argue that the manufacturers can't predict those, and therefore if the government really wants to have the vaccine quickly, they should consider putting insurance in place or something to indemnify the industry. On the other side, there's another type of liability, which is regarding the capacity of manufacturers to actually produce their vaccines according to the best manufacturing practices and according to their own specification. And for this one, I don't think that there should be a waiving of liability.
Marie-Paule Kenny, President of the French COVID-19 Vaccination Committee, thanks for joining us here on the programme.